2017, a game released which quickly gained widespread critical acclaim. Its original music is regarded as one of the best soundtracks in a game ever. The way it boldly switches gameplay genres mid-game was fascinating, and the way combat worked in the game was nothing short of what people expected from its developer, Platinum Games. However, the biggest element that made this game special and stand out from other games within this same genre is its narrative and the themes it conveyed. A narrative that is both blatantly clear in what its core messages are, yet vague enough to leave room for the player to think for themselves what they want to believe in from the story. With its heavy themes of war, what it means to be human, destiny, desire, and the like, the way they are presented is really, good. The game in question, well, if you've clicked on the video and read the title, you know that I'm talking about NieR Automata. I played Automata on my Switch in 2023, and ever since my first playthrough, I was captivated by everything in the game really, and I was very inspired by the themes the game brought up and how it made me question and think about things, so I felt compelled to write something about the game, and I've tried and failed to do so ever since I beat it, which has been a while since. I wanted to try my best to make something special and personal to me, talking about how this game affected me, but writing something that truly hits me in the feels is no easy task. Finally though, I think I've written something that I'm proud of presenting. Naturally, with how deep this video will be, spoiler warning, heavy spoiler warning for the entire plot of the game. I've also got to say that if you still want to dive into this video without having played NieR Automata, this video will be quite confusing due to the nature of how its story is told, but I will try my best to make the most important plot points clear when I get to them. Also, before I go any further, for convenience reasons, this video will be structured into chapters. I've tried to make this video as a set of mini video essays that all connect to one another, so it's easy to go back and forth between the sections, but also giving you the chance to skip sections outright. Now, to begin with, let's have a relatively quick look at the story of NieR Automata, its contents, and how it's presented and structured. Automata takes a very unconventional approach to its storytelling, as its story is not told through a traditional chronological narrative. The game has 5 main endings, A through E, with B being a retelling of A's story from a different perspective, filling in some gaps and unanswered questions, and the story told in C and D is a continuation of A and B's story, but switch perspectives multiple times throughout. The outlier here is ending E, which acts as the culmination of all the events, and acts as a point of self-reflection for the player, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Now, let me try and make a brief synopsis of NieR's story before I get to the deconstruction and analysis of it. Automata takes place in the year 1100-945 AD as the proxy war between the androids and machines continues, fighting for humanity and aliens respectively, as the machines have pushed back humanity to dangerous territory. As the androids fight for humanity, they are made by the organization Yorha, which works in close relations with the Council of Humanity. Within Yorha, there are also many different types of androids that work to destroy the machines and bring glory to mankind. The game starts proper with 2B, a battle android, being deployed into the war with her squadron before they're all wiped out, leaving her alone until Yorha sends her a scanner android, 9S, in to assist her. Together they defeat some of the machines but have to sacrifice their current bodies and get rebooted at the bunker, the last stand area of humanity. Once again, they're deployed back down to Earth to continue the fight against the machines. However, as they continue the missions on the surface, the duo discovers that the machines are mimicking human societies and are living in peace like in the forest or the carnival area, putting their beliefs into jeopardy as to how they view the machines. 2B and 9S soon discover 2 dangerous machines called Adam and Eve, who are at the forefront of the machine's assault on the androids. And that's all I'll say for now, as I'll get to some of the bigger plot points later in the video. The fact that the story involves perspective shifts through compulsory shifts and shifts which make you decide when to experience leads to a very important message the game wants to make you feel: understanding, which is also, coincidentally, the main word that I think best describes the story of NieR Automata and the main umbrella of which all the themes the game presents fall under. By managing to create different perspectives, NieR manages to make you not only respect characters and their different views, but it also acts as an important device in revealing key plot points and hints of foreshadowing that can come back later on with more prevalence. Other than perspective shifts, NieR's story also makes use of another important element, that being implications. There are quite a few events in the story that are left up to interpretation of the player, or by reading extra material of it through some logs or watching YouTube videos, but primarily left up to the player to draw these conclusions for themselves. So because there are implications and how they give the player room to think about what happened, it also gives the player room to think about the meaning of these story moments. When both the two elements combine in some of the endings regarding some characters and revelations, they are written so well and to such a high degree of depth that you begin to question a lot of stuff around you, which to me also stretched my personal perception of things as well. Like how I mentioned earlier that I would try my best to retell the story in narrative order, I have divided my 5 main points based on each path of the game and what I feel are the main themes that they each convey and what they mean. Naturally, we begin with the first path, ending A, which is the start of Automata and the story of 2B and her battle against the machines.
Everything that lives is designed to end. We are perpetually trapped in a never-ending spiral of life and death. Is this a curse? Or some kind of punishment? I often think about the God who blessed us with this cryptic puzzle, and wonder if we'll ever have the chance to kill him.
This is the very first quote of NieR Automata spoken by 2B. I never thought much about this quote until it was, inevitably, repeated later in the game. This quote by 2B, I believe, raises 3 core questions, them being, why do we create and take away life, why are we given a choice like this, and can we ever resolve this issue? Furthermore, I think these questions can be simplified into 3 words, each housing lots of weight, the words being in the order I mentioned, war, authority, and unity. To varying degrees, the game does manage to answer the questions, but in the case of 2B, the primary word and theme that I believe applies to her campaign is war. The other 2, Authority and Unity, will be saved for later, as I feel that those fit the other endings a bit better than 2B's. Also, it just gives me a better reason to divide the video into more coherent parts. So, back on track now, let's take a deeper look at the first part of 2B's quote. Everything that lives is designed to end. We are perpetually trapped in a never-ending spiral of life and death. Set above from a battleship as she and her squad are ready to fly into one of the many battles against the machines. In a way, it's a bit poetic, but it shows our frustration at the situation at this repetitive cycle, which gets a whole lot messier later as well, while still going along with it anyway. In a way, this phrase shows that she is both critical and submissive to the idea of war. Critical in that she doesn't like the cycle, and submissive in the fact that she is going out there to participate in what she believes is right. And this duality within her manages to represent both the individual struggle and overarching struggle of the people in wars. And that, 2B's and 9S's, is what the first path, ending A, wants you to think about. The impact war has on the individual and on society as a whole. Conflict is a very tough topic to discuss. From the minor arguments you might have with someone you care about, bigger conflicts you might have with a set of people, to the conflicts we see around the globe that endangers millions. It's hard to deal with and shows us how we as humans are the biggest problems to ourselves. I won't be talking about real life examples as that is a whole another topic, but as a general point, the journey towards ending A highlights many ways how we are the biggest detriment to ourselves. I think the biggest symbolism that we can seek is in the world of NieR. Automata's world shows different areas with varying sights like the vast deserts to the rundown carnival, and all these areas share one common element, that being how mankind and war has run them down. We see the man-made constructs being worn down like pipes, roads, and buildings, to how nature has slowly tried to find a way to grow back on it. The world we see is a glimpse of what will happen if constant wars take place. There are no humans we see on the surface other than the intermissions from the Council of Humanity, said to be the last surviving humans working alongside Yorha, which was that organization that is responsible for assembling the androids, urging us androids to continue this conflict in order to save mankind, give glory to mankind. There aren't even many animals in this world, which I assume shows how we've either killed most of the life that isn't human and which jeopardizes the goals of humanity, or that they've run away from us in fear and horror at how we're destroying the world. This destruction of the world has led this place to look dead. If we think about the world as a character, a living being that feels the way we do, is this a curse or some kind of punishment? The death of the world also applies to 2B's opening statement and reiterates the questions which 2B asks. Is death some sort of escape or a doomed and painful loop? And in a way, the destruction of the world proves both sides. On the one hand, the world does manage to escape from the problems mankind has created, where we have seen it retreat in areas like the sunken city or the city ruins, but it's also a bit of a paradox since we can see that nature's small presence holding on and trying to remain relevant, making it stuck in a loop where it constantly tries to survive in mankind's destruction. 2B, the other androids, and the machines themselves are all stuck in this loop, but rather than the ones trying to survive, they're the ones directly involved in the creation of the loop, in a sense becoming a victim of their own actions. So now is the time to ask, why does conflict start, and what does it bring? The main conflict the game presents, which turns out to actually be the least important conflict, is the human and android war against machines. It's a bit ironic looking at this core struggle since both sides are machines fighting, where one side thinks they're fighting for what is deemed the greater good, whereas the other side is fighting to survive. Although the antagonizing side to the androids are the machines, rightfully so, a lot of the machines are war machines that have caused immense damage to the human race and the androids. The idea of perspective is brought up because there are many machines in the game that are either completely pacifist or misunderstood. Pascal's village and the carnival area are the two pillars of this example. There is also the friendly Masamune robot. Man, I love that fella. Pascal's village is one of the most striking areas in the game because it's the one area where we can find a community living in harmony with nature. It also serves as an important area for later in the plot, but for now, the village does one thing: it paints a picture of the opposing side that you're at war with. It humanizes the enemy. These machines living here is what the higher-ups have been telling you what are the enemy on your side of the war, yet they're not involved. No fighting, no conflict, no hatred, just trying to live a life together in peace. Although 2B shows a lot of hostility towards them, still calling them the enemy, she does cooperate, unwillingly maybe, which again leads to more questions. It calls back to who is starting these conflicts, and does 2B have any sort of free will in her own choices? I've always found the name of 2B interesting, because the name itself sounds like you're saying to be. What does 2B want to be? That's a lot of 2Bs. Does she want to help others, help fight for her cause, or follow orders that she feels are right, or just stay on the winning side? And this conflict with what is viewed as right or wrong, both in a geopolitical sense and even more leading back to the conflicts within yourself. We've all heard of Hamlet's famous line in Shakespeare's play, "to be or not to be," and I think it was one of the reasons behind the naming of 2B in her quest to discovering herself, leading to her internal struggle. Ultimately, all problems that we see happen around us are problems that start from within us. Now, I'm not saying that some person sitting on his couch watching the latest broadcast on the war is at fault for the war happening. What I'm saying is that ultimately it becomes a problem because that person views it as a problem, as something that they wish they can change, for what they believe to be the right cause. Conflicts happen all the time, and in the case of Automata, it presents both the horrors and overarching conflict that affects probably billions, and that internal conflict. For being an android, a machine, 2B really goes through a lot of emotions that question her morals. She's a war machine that is starting to develop emotions of sorts towards a comrade in arms, sees her comrades die many times in combat, has to work with the enemy, and in the end, loses her closest ally and friend, 9S, and all these emotions and events that happen to her question both the core ideals that we as humans have towards death and free will. In a way, 2B is longing for a way, or asking for a way, to remove her sense of individuality in her free will. She continuously disconnects herself from all things that can cause her pain and suffering and just wants to fight. No friendships, emotions, just fighting for the person giving orders. So is that the meaning of life, to just give in, sacrifice what it means to be you and just follow orders and keep going? That's something that I would label as negative growth, where you are progressing in life, yes, doing what you must, but it is never ending. You become a part of something where you won't feel emotions, you're just present, where you end up becoming desensitized to what is going on around you, no matter how good or bad it may be, accepting what happens as happens, and there won't be any winners, and only more problems will arise, and more division. Or you can choose to accept pain and suffering, but choose to keep going. Growth in the sense that you understand what others are going through, and you choose to do something, not just for yourself, but which ultimately helps the people around you. You have your free will, and you use it, willing to be free. And that's what 2B does. She chooses to grow as a person, accept what's happening around her, fights for something, and understands the most important thing in any conflict, that there will always be two sides on the coin. Ultimately, in the final moments of Ending A, when fighting Eve and defeating them, 9S appears to be dead once again, but is transported into the body of a nearby machine where 2B reads out a powerful line. She understands now that in war, there are no winners, and that both sides are far closer to one another than they wish to believe. Seeing someone she values and holds deep in the shoes of her enemy has finally made her understand this, that in the end, no matter how much you think you're in the right, how great of a person you think you are, that person sitting across you is just as human as you are.
Once we eradicate the machine life forms, us soldiers won't have anything left to do. We'll enter a new age of peace. And when that happens, we should go shopping together. I could buy you, I don't know, a t-shirt maybe? Something that looks good on you.
9S. The saving half that opened up 2B's eyes in seeing the world in a more human way, or is it? Anyways, that's for later. For now, let's just stick to the core philosophy and ideals that 9S echoes in both the A and B endings, specifically focusing on ending B. Also, I do think it's going to be a nice change of pace to focus on the more positive outlooks the game presents before we get into the deepest and despair-inducing parts of the game. Because although 9S and Ending B is one of the more tame and calming experiences in the game, on a deeper level, a lot of hard and disturbing themes come forth. Now, Route B of NieR Automata is a very interesting way of formatting a New Game Plus system while actually progressing the story. You keep the same level and items you had from your first run of the game in that same run, but now you're playing as a completely different character, 9S. 9A's plays very different from 2B, where her main way of attacking was through using two different weapon types to string together combos. 9S has to resort to hacking his enemies, which is a big change of pace. But back to the structure of the path, one thing that really had me intrigued when playing through Route A the first time was what 9S was going through. 9S would just disappear multiple times throughout the story and would come back a changed person of sorts when we'd reunite with him. I remember my first thoughts when playing were, oh, 9S is actually 100% on the machine side and is secretly helping them defeat 2B and the androids, but the answer that I ended up getting was something that I did not expect. First up, let's look at 9S' character, because he has one distinct trait that is not found in the other main characters, that being, he actively tries his best to pursue relationships with others. Now, if you heard that and thought to yourself, actually, there aren't any romantic undertones between 9S and any of the characters, well, you're not completely wrong, but I'm not talking about romance. I'm simply talking about connecting with someone else. You know how it took 2B her whole route to discover the power of understanding others? That's thanks to 9S, who has been open to connecting with others from the get-go. However, what he ends up learning is how these relationships can end up changing you entirely. What does that mean exactly? How can relationships change you? In the case of 9S, it's when a relationship becomes so profound that it ends up changing the way you deal with something. Depending on the way of how you feel, it will impact the other person in that relationship. In stark contrast to 2B, 9S is chattier compared to 2B. The tone of his voice is a lot brighter, always trying to make small talk, and is just generally a lot more optimistic. 9S represents the side of humanity that wishes to understand others, that need for social interaction. Aristotle believed that humans are social animals, which is just as true as it is today, as when society lived in ancient Greece, and will continue on like this as long as humanity lives. There is also a childlike wonder that can be seen in 9S, in the way he interacts and reacts to the world. It might not be the right way to describe it, but it does fit. He continuously questions others with pretty simple questions and responds in a manner you won't really expect to see in a setting of war, but it's the most effective way in trying to understand what is going on. This could be completely wrong and I've just experienced life a different way, but I think as you grow older, people generally ask less questions. Sure, we still ask questions of stuff that we really want answered, but constantly questioning stuff is not the norm. So seeing 9S constantly posing questions is the best way to break down this barrier. He's not taking pride or presenting himself as superior. He actually wants to learn more and understand. This could just be because he is a scanner android, which is what the S in his name stands for, which are androids that are set out to scout and investigate, having the questioning being built into his nature. Now that I think about it, it does sound a bit strange that an android representing the side of humanity has to have a questioning side programmed into them in order to spark simple interactions, right? Questions lead to answers, which means understanding, which then leads to relating, and then finally, forming a bond. That's the process that 9S goes through when interacting with 2B, who also reciprocates 9S's questions and forms a connection with him as well. And as they grow closer, they do change for better and for worse. The impact that 9S has on 2B can't be understated. I remember 2B being very closed off and very conformist in a way, but later opens up more, and we can really see how much he has changed in the final route of the game after endings A and B, where she really values 9S. 9S tries his very best to have 2B sympathize and empathize for the other side of the conflict, and from what we know about ending A, shows that this bond had a positive effect on her. Debatably, the same cannot be said for 9S. I wouldn't call his friendship and respect to 2B a destructive or toxic one, but 9S does come out more broken and hurt than 2B does. Although the full effects of 2B on 9S's mental state isn't in full swing until we beat ending B, there are quite a few signs and revelations in ending B that change him instantly and foreshadow something greater, because it doesn't just highlight relationships with friends and the like, but also highlights the relation you have with higher power. What do I mean by that? If you haven't played the game, you won't know this, as I purposely left it out of the plot summary at the start. Some people saw this twist coming, others thought about it, and for some it really caught them by surprise. But no matter which of these three camps you fall into, the impact it has ripples throughout the game. Humanity is dead. It has been dead for a long time, long before the events of the game, and there is no hope of humanity ever coming back. This is what 9S finds out in the final moments of his campaign in Ending B, after hacking a machine and finding a back wall and glitches into its files, where he puts these pieces together, and upon being sent back to the bunker on the moon, the commander of Yora admits this to him. It's big, as both he and 2B have been fighting to save humanity and having fought for something for so long, only to find out that it was also, well, basically for nothing, has got to hurt. But it's what 9S chooses to do with this information which is impactful. Instead of revealing what he discovered to 2B, 9S chooses to withhold the secret and carries it with himself. And then, as you get back to playing, Ending B unfolds in the exact same manner as Ending A, but now with the added context of 9S's discovery. 9S's simple action of withholding the secret is hard to deal with, especially in the added context in how it brings about his downfall in the next endings. 9S has now discovered something as a seeker, and from it has now changed the way he operates. His idea of self has now shifted from being an android to seek out discovery to now steering away from his built-up destiny and protects 2B. 9S understands how much this revelation would hurt 2B that he ultimately decides to suffer this pain for her than with her, by keeping her in the blind. The truth hurts, you know? Sometimes there are times that I've wanted to unknow some things about others or how things work, or keep some others out of the light with the same intentions as 9S in order to not hurt them. Ignorance is bliss, and so too that curiosity killed the cat. 9S's way of going about this discovery started off more as an empathetic one, as he wanted to help save humanity, but in the end becomes arguably one of the most selfish actions in the entire game, and the one that ultimately caused this downfall that I've been talking about for a few minutes, which you'll see in a couple more chapters. I will not fault 9S entirely here, because his care for 2B is genuine and real, but at some point you have to realize when your genuinity starts to hurt yourself, because no matter how much you want to help others, they cannot be helped if you are incapable of helping them. He took too much onto his own plate by bearing this alone, and his mental state starts to deteriorate the more he tries to go at it alone. 2B finds herself in a far better place in life than at the start of the story after Ending B, whereas 9S is significantly worse off. I guess one of the core messages to take away from this is that you shouldn't feel afraid to reach out for help. You don't need to go solo. You have friends, family, and others out there who are there to help you when the time is right. If you feel something clawing inside you, making you hurt, don't hesitate. Talk to someone. Talk to them. Maybe what is hurting you will hurt them too, but at least together, you have a chance at moving forward, building something together, and being able to move past it. And the same goes to the other side too. Reach out to those that you care for and ask them if everything is alright if you think they're having a rough time. Let them know someone's there for them, because if unchecked, being at the wrong place and the wrong time can lead to even more disaster. This is why when very early on the third route of NieR Automata, 2B is killed by the rogue android A2 in front of 9S, and this is where he falls into his own descent of madness.
I never quite realized how beautiful this world is. I'm coming, everyone. I'm coming.
Before we get to that point, let's start by talking about how endings C and D are structured. Endings A and B are basically the same story, but played through different perspectives, as mentioned previously, whereas endings C and D are linked to a pretty major choice you have to make at the end of your third playthrough of the game. If you choose one or the other upon completion, the game unlocks its chapter select feature, where you can load back to the moments before the vital choice. As for the third route itself, there are many checkpoints and chapters that prompt the player if they want to switch between the playable characters, which is mandatory to do, as you won't be able to reach the endgame without having played both perspectives. One of the playable characters is 9S, whereas the other is the android A2, who kills 2B. There is, however, a short prologue before we get to this moment where you play as 2B following the events of the first two endings. 2B and 9S are once again deployed back to Earth, where Yorha has now decided to launch a final, full-scale invasion to destroy the machines once and for all. However, all Yorha units bar 2B and 9S become infected by a virus dubbed the logic virus, caused by the data glitch that 9S unearthed when discovering the truth about humanity and the system, where the virus corrupts the entire system of those infected. As 9S and 2B fight for their survival, they are separated, and 2B starts to feel the effects of the virus, and I have to say, this section playing as 2B is grueling. Seeing a character that you've come to love across this journey slowly start to fade away is painful, and the slow gameplay here, with her malfunctioning, is a bit frustrating, yes, but it's effective. It perfectly conveys those final moments of a life where you still have so much that you want to do, but time's run out, and all you can do is try to move forward until we cross paths with A2, where she then spends her final moments asking A2 to save humanity. A2, seeing the state 2B is in, kills 2B and ends her suffering. However, 9S arrives at the wrong place and really at the worst possible time and sees the killing and attempts to kill A2 in revenge before a tower is suddenly resurrected in the middle of the abandoned city, sending them both onto their different paths. I'll get to 9S' story in the next part of the video, but for now, let me talk about my favorite character in the game, A2. A2 is a very interesting character. She was first introduced as a minor antagonist earlier in the story as a rogue Yorha unit who has been causing problems for her previous organization ever since she left, and in her first encounter with the duo, she ends up killing the Prince of the Machines, and then she says that the commander is the one to blame, before disappearing until we see her at 2B's death. Upon waking up again, A2 finds out that 2B has assigned her pod to her. Pods I've not gone over are these companion units that help the androids in their objectives, helping them with their combat and helping them give, insightful information about the world. And A2 is quite hostile towards having this pod follow her around, as it's only following her based on 2B's final wish. One thing that I still don't quite get is what A2's initial goal was. A2 had disbanded from Yorha for reasons unknown in the game, but if I'm not mistaken, you find out more from a stage play or something like that. Yes, I know it's quite wild that you get more game lore for NieR Automata in a stage play, that Yorha had sent A2 and her squad on a kamikaze mission which they weren't told of. What's also important to note is that A2 was initially a test project for the future of Yorha androids, and this mission appears to be Yorha's way of rebooting the program. Naturally, I would assume that something like this would make you stray away from what had hurt you, but A2 has been carrying out Yorha's original goal just without them. She's been wandering the earth and just been killing machines, Yorha's goal. A2 seemingly has no purpose of her own and just wanders the earth, a representation of people who find themselves betrayed but refuse to take a different path, but instead just do what they've always done. By sheer chance, A2 has to replace one of her parts due to being separated from Yorha and all the maintenance that their androids go through, where Pod chimes in, telling her to seek help at Pascal's village. Like I mentioned way back in the first chapter of the video, Pascal's village is one of the most important locations in NieR, and it's because of A2's story. A2, mirroring 2B, sees the machines as the enemy of the androids and mankind, but cooperates with them and soon begins to understand them. She learns how Pascal has taught the old and younger generations of the machines emotions, ways of peace, and living in harmony. It's beautiful to see how much Pascal cares for the children of the village, believing them to be the future of the machines and really instilling great emotions and values in them to keep them safe, like empathy, joy, and fear. However, not all good things last forever. On your way back to the village after a mission, Pascal's village of machines is set ablaze and under attack by another set of machines. Mass G-word. My first initial thought was that the logic virus had finally reached the machine life forms, but no, there's actually someone else behind it, related to the tower that popped up. But man, just seeing the village in a state like this was horrifying. There is no build-up, it just happens. A whole community that advocated for peace just destroyed. Gone. Although A2 does hurt by seeing a group she has started to care for just get wiped out like this, but it hurts the player more. We as a player have experienced 3 playthroughs of this village and have really come to appreciate what the village stands for. Pascal, distraught by everything, works with A2 to save the children, who sends them to the abandoned factory for refuge, where A2 and Pascal then fight off all the remaining machines that are closing in on them. We fight and then fight some more, and then there's also this really cool kaiju battle, until you win and fend off the machines. Delighted, they return to the factory to check on the children.
No, how can this? own cores? They killed themselves.
How? How could this happen?
All the children are dead. They removed their own cores from their bodies, ending their own lives out of fear that those violent robots would come back to hurt them. Pascal, distraught by seeing what has essentially become his family and everything he's worked for now all gone, said that if he knew that it would all lead to this, he wouldn't have done any of it, and ultimately asks A2 to either end him or wipe his memory completely, as he can't live with this heartbreak of seeing just this. A2's story up until this point, I believe, talks about the idea of unity. Unity as a community, the union between others, and importantly, the unity in yourself. Like 2B, A2 manages to see that machines and androids can coexist and live together peacefully. And Pascal inspires A2 to find herself in a way and unites her with a purpose. A2 has found the beauty in the world, an inspiration that challenged her previous beliefs, and also highlights what I said previously in how important relationships are. Despite her bond with Pascal being a short one, his values and beliefs help A2 find herself, and then either to find more answers or what I think to continue both Pascal's and 2B's dreams to make the world a better place, she heads over to that mysterious tower, or at least that's what I'd like to believe is her reason for going to the tower. Despite how tough or hard the world around you might be, how much it will beat you to the ground, you still have a chance to fight. You can still choose to believe in what you believe is your purpose, even if the world might be eating up those that meant something to you. A while ago, I read a quote that really hit me, and I find it relevant to this. Although I'm unsure who was the original author of the quote, I've read it originating from Irvin Yalom, Ernest Hemingway, and Bensky. However, the simplified quote reads like this: "They say you die twice. One time when you stop breathing, and the second time a bit later on when somebody says your name for the last time." Even though someone that inspires you or someone you care for is no longer with you, they aren't gone. You can still carry on their dreams with you as you go. It may be a tough uphill battle where you have to put someone before you, but if that goal means so much to you, it gives you that purpose where you can find yourself. Unity shouldn't just be used to infer that you are linked with someone else, because if you are lost and try to unite with someone who's already found their goal, you're just empty and following them, like 2B at the very start of the game, blindly following the orders of Yoha, or A2 being a hollow vessel because of what hurt her. That's where goals, dreams, and meaning arise, as they fuse what makes you, you. And as A2 has now finally found that meaning in life, she makes her way to that mysterious tower in a continuous search for her purpose, carrying both the dreams of Pascal and of 2B in an attempt to make the world a better place. She has moved on from the past and is stepping into the unknown. However, this is not where Ending C takes place. Ending C and D are a choice that you make once you've completed both perspectives on the third route, which is where we now go back to 9S.
I can't stop. I have to keep fighting.
9S's story after Ending B shows the other side of A2's coin, and is a story that is a lot more complex. I wouldn't say 9S is my favorite character in NieR Automata, but his arc is definitely the most interesting one, by a long shot. In this third route leading up to Ending C and D, 9S's arc highlights ignorance, hate, toxic positivity, and tragedy. His arc is also a strong departure from the duality that the three previous stories all share together, where 2B, 8-2, and 9S before 2B's death all strove forward to finding the best version of themselves through finding their purpose in life. 9S, having held on to the burdens of what he has come to learn, is now suffering through it, and seeing the death of 2B really sends him on a downward spiral. I did mention earlier in the video that there would be 3 keywords to describe each character: war for 2B, unity for 8-2, and now finally, we have authority for 9S. 9S' struggle with authority is prevalent throughout both his campaign, but is both front and center in this final act of the story. Not only does he finally break free from the authorities that have been controlling him, the questions of whether there is an actual authority exists are also brought up, and whether we are still constrained to some superior power even if they do not exist. After being separated from A2 by the sudden emergence of the tower, he wakes up in a resistance camp, greeted by the twin robots Devila and Popula. Now, I have not played the original NieR, so I can't fully comment on the twins' importance, but as for now, they are medics for the Resistance and aid 9S in his quest to enter the tower, which he conveniently can't open until he destroys the tower's core spread across the land. However, anything that is linked to some mysterious technology like this ultimately holds some dark secrets. Now that I think about it, it's a bit sad that 9S is the one that must bear these secrets, but I guess it could link back to his innocence, where he is finally learning to see the world for how it is. In one tower, 9S learns that the androids are built from the same core as the machines, meaning that the great divide between machines and androids isn't actually true. And then later from another tower, learns that the war between the androids and the machines has been going on for centuries and won't ever stop, as there's a failsafe, if you can call it that stops the androids from wiping out the machines completely by eliminating them all through the logic virus, then letting the system recreate Project Yorha from scratch. So we have arguably the character in the worst mental state be the one to discover all these revelations. Yeah, this doesn't bode well. I think it represents that in the end, all problems are bound to repeat themselves, especially once we start to view ourselves as greater than the opposing side, rather than seeing our similarities. Though there is also an argument that we wish to be ignorant to these issues. It's very interesting as to why 2B, 9S, and the other androids wear blindfolds, but it's ultimately a very surface level analysis once we've gone this far, as the blindfold symbolizes a barrier to the truth, where they won't see the truth and then refuse to acknowledge it. Do they refuse to see the world entirely, or just limit themselves to what they believe to be the truth? Well, in the case of 9S, he is blinded by the truth while simultaneously refusing to accept it. 9S slowly fades away from working on his intended destiny as a scanner machine and is now acting more like an A or B type Yorha unit designed for attacking the enemy front lines as he destroys the tower cores and makes his way to the tower. Has 9S found his true purpose like 2B or A2, working for something great? Well, no. He is blinded by anger, has a false sense of justice, and is ultimately driven by his own interests. Seeing him make his way to the tower in such a state has to be one of the saddest character fall-offs ever. 9S is the definition of a tragic hero compared to 2B, whose end was abrupt and tragic, yes, but she was not suffering, she was at peace. Does this mean that everything 9S has lived for to be a lie? Is he only meant to live to serve his creators? Can he ever find some sort of freedom? This idea of finding freedom is what I think is perfectly told through the gameplay of the final section of the game in the climb up to the tower. Now that we're both caught up on A2 and 9S's story, the final arc of the game starts. A2 in her quest to fulfill her newfound purpose, and 9S in his rage-induced state for revenge propel up the tower in parallel, learning different truths as they climb that same tower, a reflection of how no single path will ever be the same trip. A2 discovers the true mastermind behind the war between androids and machines, a unit known as number 2 or N2, and battles it on her climb up the tower, as the N2 machine also splits and starts fighting 9S. Although we did learn in 9S's story that the war was orchestrated, finally seeing the being that caused all this damage to the world, well, it sure was something. However, what A2 learns isn't as disturbing as what 9S learns. 9S unnerves through his battles with a set of 2B clones that 2B isn't 2B. She was instead 2E. What's the big difference, you may ask? Well, it's that B units are simple combat robots meant to fight on the front lines of the war, whereas E units are executioner units, specifically designed by Yorha to kill scanner units like 9S whenever they fly too close to the sun and are about to uncover the true nature of Yorha and the secret that humanity is dead. This is arguably the greatest reveal in the game for several reasons. For one, it is also revealed that 2B has eliminated 9S multiple times before the story started, hence why at the end of Ending A, she proclaims that it always ends like this, showing how 2B remembers every single time she's had to kill 9S until he is then rebooted in the bunker, which also shows why she is reluctant to form any bond with him at the start, because she knows that it'll hurt her in the end as she grows close to him. However, with the rage that 9S uses to defeat the 2B clones implies that he has known about this for a long time. For how long? No one knows, but it really puts into perspective what 9S actually thinks about 2B. An earlier section, when hacking into the system leaves a specific 4-letter word in blank, but frames it in a way that sounds like Do you want to beep 2B to make it sound more sensual? But I think the foreword here is kill. He's angry at Yorha, 2B, everything, and wants it all gone. It's also useful to know that 2B still had their goals in saving humanity, as executioner robots weren't authorized clearance to know that humanity had gone extinct, just that they would know when to eliminate the scanner types when they got too close to finding the secrets. This does leave me a bit confused as to why Yorha would create scanner units in the first place. Is it to use the data they gathered to get closer to defeating the war, which they never will because they don't know that there's a failsafe in place, or just there to simply give the other androids an illusion that they're working to save humanity? I'm not so sure. But as A2 and 9S barrel towards the top of the tower, it's spectacular. The camera shifts, gameplay shifts, narrative focus, as they both fight versions of N2 for different reasons. It's one of the greatest moments in gaming in my opinion. Once we do reach the top, the two finally meet once again, where A2 explicitly lays out the truth about 2B being 2E, which is where we as players first find this out, but I still believe 9S knew this before, but refuses to believe it. It is here where one of the toughest choices in gaming is posed. As both the androids face off against each other, will you fight as 9S or as A2? And so the path branches out the next two endings. Ending C is where A2 wins the battle, defeats 9S, and manages to suppress the destructive nature of the tower, saving 9S from the logic virus, and dies along with the deconstruction of the White Tower, reuniting with her fallen comrades. Ending D is where 9S wins, but he somehow kills both himself and A2, and we get to see the tower shoot up into the sky, sending the data of the machines into outer space to continue the cycle of war once again. One character died at peace, knowing she has done something for the greater good, whilst the other died having achieved nothing, and keeps the cycle of war ongoing in another place. Would you rather have authority of your own goals, or let the authority take you?
Everything that lives is designed to end. They are perpetually trapped in a never-ending spiral of life and death. However, life is all about the struggle within this cycle. That is what we believe.
Ending E. The final main ending of the game, the true ending of the game. Ending E might be one of the strangest endings in gaming for how out of place it feels, how short it is, but in those final moments, it manages to pack so much story, so much punch, and is one of the most impactful moments from the entire game. Ending E can only be unlocked after having completed both ending C and D, and acts as a follow-up to ending D, where the last two androids, A2 and 9S, are offline. This final sequence starts with the two pods who are the companions of the three protagonists of the game, Pod 153 and Pod 042, who are now tasked with restarting Project Yorha by deleting all the previous data of Project Yorha, meaning that the cycle of war is set to begin once more. However, Pod 153 asks the player to halt the data check, as the pods realize that the data of the three heroes are leaking out. Pod 153 asks 042 to continue deleting the data, but 042 refuses. They cannot accept this outcome and starts to restore the data of 2B, 9S, and A2. Both pods soon do come to terms that they have grown and had hoped that the trio would have survived. However, salvaging their data is an immense risk and prompts the player once more if they are willing to go through with it, and choosing yes initiates the one and only gameplay sequence of ending E, a shoot 'em up sequence with the credits of the game. I have a soft spot for games that let you shoot the credits as they fall ever since I saw it happen in Smash Bros. Brawl back on the Wii. However, I don't think any game has implemented such a feature in such a meta way, if you can call it that. As you start shooting the credits, the names of the devs start firing back, which plays like the hacking mini sections of 9S. So what does all this mean? Because everything in Automata has some ulterior meaning. Is this simply a way of thanking the player for playing? I think that's part of it, but I think it's also linked with the main idea of finding your purpose and carrying on the dreams of others. What were the aspirations and dreams of 2B, 9S, and A2? To save humanity and end the war. And to do so, we must break the cycle, which is how I interpret the purpose of shooting the credits. NieR Automata is no normal game, and it seems like the credits here are used in a way to try and stop you from breaking what is considered a normal gaming convention, which at the same time acts as the only way to halt the data deletion of Project Yorha. If you choose to go ahead with the data deletion, the credits will continue as normal, and the cycle of war that the androids find themselves in is bound to continue. This leaves the only way to make significant change is to start with yourself and break the cycle to force change to happen. So as you blast the names of Yoko Taro and the rest of his dev team, the pods talk between each other, finally having grown a consciousness and seemingly have developed some sort of free will of their own. When exactly did they gain this free will? This idea of rebelling against what they've been programmed to see as an undeniable fact? I don't know, but the pods realized that once the 6 of them had connected over the course of the journey, something changed in them, where Pod 042 can't deny that either a consciousness or emotion has been born inside them. Pod 153 is unable to reply to this, but Pod 042 responds that perhaps we now understand that not everything has to have an answer. If you think about it, who are the 6 people that the pods interacted with along the way that they mentioned? We have the 2 pods, so that makes 2 of them. 2B, 9S, A2, which makes 5. That leaves you, the player. You've been a catalyst for change in the lives of these machines, having helped them get this far. You keep fighting with one of the best songs in the background playing, Weight of the World, but at some point, you die as the credits swarm you. But prompts show up, asking you if you admit that there is no meaning to life, or if games are silly little things. You disagree with these statements and keep fighting before you start receiving offers of help from other players. Their data fuses with your player icon and you blast through the credits. You power through the barriers and obstacles which are set in place to keep the status quo going, but you just push through. You keep trying to forge your own path until finally you hit that final credit sequence where the pods echo the very first line said in the game. However, they also realize one flaw with their desire. If they are to restore the memories of the 3 androids, won't that lead to the same outcome as before? This is the biggest dilemma posed, and there is no other explanation around it. It is inevitable, as their memories would be restored prior to the logic virus outbreak, which would lead to this very same outcome of them dying. But Pod 042 cannot deny the possibility, because there is also a possibility of a different future. As a future is not given to you, it is something you must take for yourself. The biggest theme to take away from this is that change happens when you step outside of the comfort zone. That is something that all the characters have come to understand by the time they all reach their end. But what is it that compels us to step out of this comfort zone, this drive for change? Because if you think about it, there was no responsibility placed on you to follow through with this ending. It was your choice, yet somehow I assume you felt a lot more free when doing this ending. Why is it that we open up and feel less constrained when we give ourselves a responsibility? Is it because it's something that gives us a drive to move forward and become our own, as it places limits on what we can do, yet also allows us to be ourselves? Like, think about it. You could have just decided to go ahead with the normal deletion process and started playing the game from scratch, yet you would take it on yourself to fight. Although it's just a game, it stretches over to the real world. If you just sit at home, living away and doing nothing to further yourself, you feel a lot more limited and stuck. But when you place a limit on yourself, setting up a goal, limiting your own freedom, it allows you to truly be yourself. And I think that's what's the point of this ending, to make you understand that if you just let things happen around you, there won't ever be a change, because you have to make an effort to step out of the cycle, which is also where some of the most beautiful moments in life happen. But it also asks us, where do these ideas come from? Our ideals, values, morals, do they just happen to be inside of us, waiting for a moment to unshackle themselves as desires, wanting to become something more? Like Pascal and the machines and the androids, where do these feelings come from? Do they dictate our lives? Like anything, it comes down to moderation. If you lose sight of your own goals and let them cloud you with other emotions, you may end up like 9S, losing sight of what is morally good to just do what you think is right. You can never just think about yourself, because you are not the world. You are just a part of the world, and together we can create a change. That's why other players' save data comes to your aid in that final sequence in the credits battle. Alone, you are bound to die multiple times, but with the aid of others, you can defeat it. Unlike 9S, who shrugged off any kind of help, ended up in demise, and he could have ended up differently had he only reached out, like you did in ending E. It's always important to help others, regardless of how much you like them, how different they are from you. You can still help them, because helping doesn't just mean supporting them blindly. You can help them open their eyes, lend them resources when they're in need, or simply just talking to them. By doing so, you're one step closer to ending the cycle of difference that Automata talks about. However, sometimes to create a greater change, it requires a piece of you. After the final cutscene of the game, the pods prompt you, the player, once more, if you wish to help other players in need by sending the remaining data you have to other players struggling with this final boss, at the cost that your save data will be deleted from your game. The countless hours you spent in the game, the story you've helped tell, will be reset, gone, nada, deleted. It's a tough choice, because on one hand, helping other players like others helped me feels right, but at the same time, man, I would just love to replay my favorite chapters, finish up any remaining quests, and get to play as A2 again, at the cost that the cycle of war will continue in the world of NieR Automata. So on the 16th of December 2023, I had finally reached the final stages of NieR Automata. This was also the day where I willingly chose to delete my entire save file in this game. It's strange to say it if you haven't played the game, but that's how it is. That's the choice given to you, the player, in ending E. Whether it was the right choice or not is up to debate, but for me, I think it was the right choice. I stopped the war between the androids and the machines by deleting everything, making sure that Project Yoha would not keep fighting a meaningless and manipulative fight, whilst N2 would no longer be able to extend and restart that war. But I won't deny that that is the right answer for everyone. Some players might go back and replay the entire game for a variety of reasons, but maybe once they've played it enough times, they're ready to delete their save file and end their time with NieR Automata. Or maybe they never will and they'll let the androids and machines keep fighting, yet I cannot say that this is the wrong answer. Although this answer, which I think is the wrong one, I will never be able to say that it is. We are all at different stages in life, having experienced different truths, different lives, different morals and values. Our past actions, what we experienced in the present, and how we think the future may end up, dictates how we go about our choices. As long as in the end, we can understand where our differences lie, where we can stand together and work together for what we can deem the greater good, is what's important. Like in those final moments of ending E, all the player icons that surround your own look just like you, yet I can guarantee that each player who sat behind the screen sending their save data to help others don't think like me at all. Yet together we decided that it was the right thing to do at that very moment, where we found common ground. And I guess that's the beauty of life, that all of us, no matter our differences, we are still people and we can all stand together and face any challenge under the weight of the world and end the cycle. What cycle may that be? Well, only time will tell as we continue to work Sometimes I wonder if everyone experienced these 5 endings. It's a long game and I think some players may just beat ending A and call it a day, but man are they missing out, because there is so much more in this game. It's a life-changing experience, I'd say, and NieR Automata, the more time I've spent away from it after completing it, has made me appreciate it that much more. Yoko Taro and Platinum Games have crafted a game that can leave you thinking about so many different things, and there's no doubt as to why so many gamers have called this one of the deepest or most profound games to be ever released. I'm not quite sure how I should end this video, as I think I've been rambling more than enough for, because I have no idea how long this video may end up being, but I want to thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I also want to apologize if the video ends up being a bit of an incoherent mess at times, or if I did not fully expand on everything what the game talked about or missed some stuff. Maybe this video won't reach many people, but if it does, my aim was to talk about my experience with this wonderful game, and can maybe just help someone who needs to hear this game's message at this very moment in their life. I also want to thank my subscribers for the recent support of my videos, as I'm super happy to have reached 900 subs recently, so thank you for that. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts down below, and I'll be signing out. So let me read out my final message that I sent along with my save data to help out the other players in those final moments of ending E in NieR Automata. Sometimes you just feel trapped. If that's the case, keep trying for just a bit longer. And with that, Storm out.